So what we're going to talk about today is integrity with applications in particular in finance and in finance, really focusing on the relationship between firm and capital markets. But I am going to start out with this, a summary at least, give an introduction with this new work I and a couple of co-authors have been doing on a positive model of integrity, one that doesn't involve any normative aspects. And its importance to firm value. And we'll also talk about what I would like to do is stimulate an interest in this concept for empirical work, for theory. One way to put it, if I were talking to my economist colleagues, is that integrity in the way I'm going to define it, I and my co-authors claim, is an incredibly important factor of production. We're used to thinking about labor and capital and knowledge and technology as important factors of production. The definition being whole and complete with respect to your word. And what that's going to mean is, I'm going to convert it, simplify things a little bit. That's, you're whole and complete with your word when you honor it. So here's some areas in finance where integrity is lacking. So the recommendations by a lot of people to firms that whose equity is overvalued, you should sell stock or bonds or acquire a less overvalued firm with your overvalued stock. I'll come back to that in a minute. Budget and target-based compensation plans. Pay people according to how close they meet their targets. Anybody worked in an environment like that? Most large organizations in the world, in fact, run their organizations that way. I wrote a paper on that a number of years ago entitled Paying People to Lie, the Truth About the Budgeting Process. The accountants have known about this for a long time. If we have time, I'll go through some of that, and for those who, just as background for what's going on in the capital markets. That, by the way, is a fundamental place where people get taught to be out of integrity. They really do get taught to be liars. Because in polite circles, it's called underperformance and underpromise and overdeliver. That says lie and lie. And I guarantee you that organizations that run themselves that way will not have performance as high as it is. My guess is, on this budget and target-based compensation plans, that if we could eliminate that in organizations, productivity would go up on average about 100%. So we are not talking about small things. And yet, everybody, it's so much a part of the landscape that managers and even can't imagine how you could manage a firm without that kind of a system. So you're in a durable goods industry. You're a customer now of this organization. In October, they tell you there's a 10% price increase if you buy after January 2nd. So you move some of your purchases into this quarter, right? Which was the whole purpose of this. And then at the same time, you spread some expenses out. So on the way out and on the way to the airplane to go home, I said to some of my board member colleagues, not the CEO, because he wasn't asking, watch what happens if we don't make it. Because then it's going to go just the opposite way. And by the way, that was an enormously costly decision for that management team to make, because it was an industry with overcapacity, prices were declining, and it was a real decision that destroyed real value. And eventually they had to exit the business, but not solely the result of that. At the January board meeting, sure enough, it turns out we hadn't made the target, the 4%. Guess what? We reported, we went from a situation of being that far from making a 4% return on assets to the largest quarterly loss in the history of the company. How did that happen? Well, once they realized they weren't going to make it, then they undid it all. And that's called the big bath theory. So there's all kinds of lying going on in that system. And when managers are taught to lie that way. By the way, nobody ever uses the word lie. It's all negotiations, right? Right?